Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Dennis.
I just texted Dave and he said he's on his way, so give it a few minutes.
I think the pro temp is here, Dennis.
Well, it's up to the group if you want to wait a few minutes for Dave, or Mike can start the meeting. It's up to you guys.
I'd prefer that he starts it. Anyone object to that?
If Mike wants to get moving, I think that's fine.
I couldn't hear you, Therese.
I said if Mr. Jones wants to take the reins and move forward, I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, I do too. So,
All right, I turned the camera on. All right, call to order the regular meeting of the Windsor Heights City Council, Monday, July 19th, 6:04 p.m. Roll call.
Susan Skerries,
Here.
Joseph Jones, Mike Lafredo,
yes,
Mike Jones,
Here.
and Therese Harms.
Here,
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Want me to take over?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Somehow or another, I lost my link. So now we have it. Okay, motion to approve the agenda.
so moved.
I moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Susan Skerries,
Yes.
Mike Lafredo,
Yes,
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Theresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is several public hearings. Motion to open the public hearing on the site plan for Hy-Vee Isles Online.
So
so
moved.
moved.
Second? Someone?
Second.
Okay. Travis, do we have anybody on that wants to talk about it from outside?
I'll do a roll call quick first on that motion, if that's okay, Mayor.
Roll
Susan Skerries,
Yes.
Mike Lafredo,
Yes,
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Theresa Harms.
Yes.
Okay, I haven't heard anything from anyone.
Okay. Council, you got any comments on it?
Is there anybody to speak to the site plan and to give some commentary or background on it? Is anybody from,
Actually, John Breen just messaged to the group saying he's with Hy-Vee, available for any questions people have.
Dalton, you or Dennis want to say anything regarding what P and Z says and about the plan?
Dalton, go ahead. Dalton has managed this site plan review since its application. And then John, as has been said, John is, I can see him online now too.
Mhm.
Yeah, specifics for the site, I'll defer to John. P and Z did review this about a month ago and recommended approval. Lauren's on if she's on the P and Z if you have questions specific to the commission. But I mean, there was some discussion about like traffic flows, how the Hy-Vee Isles Online works logistically, some signage requests, stormwater requests, parking requests. But staff and the P and Z, I think, generally agrees with recommending the request, the requests that Hy-Vee is making.
John, you want to make any comments on that?
Sure, I can. Sure. Good evening. My name is John Brum, Director of Site Planning with Hy-Vee, 5820 West Town Parkway, West Des Moines, Iowa. A little background on what we're doing here. I'll try and keep this short, but we've been working on Isles Online since roughly 2015, 2016. It's our foray into e-commerce. We were getting by just fine with a couple parking stalls at the store and bringing orders out as people ordered them online prior to the pandemic. And then when the pandemic hit, a lot of people were forced to try the service and a lot of people liked it. So now we're looking at roughly 10% of our sales volume going through Isles Online, and we're anticipating that will increase to 24 to 30% of our sales volume going through Isles Online. So those are people that won't even go in the store anymore unless there's something they forget and they can pull around and get that. But the idea here is we receive the orders through the Isles Online application. Those orders are processed ahead of a scheduled pickup time. They're held in cold space, cold storage in the back of the store. And then approximately an hour to 2 hours prior to pickup, the totes, the orders are stored in totes. Those totes are brought out of the back of the store and they're brought into this Isles Online space. And this makes it really efficient for our employees to greet our customers and get the groceries out of the totes and into their vehicles fairly quickly. We're seeing times around 4 minutes or less to get that done. A couple things that came up during planning and zoning. I think the biggest one was concerns about traffic and how do we control it. We have provided quite a bit of queuing on this project. I don't know if you have drawings in front of you or not, but the Isles Online kiosk is in the back of the store on the west side. And there's two entrances onto University Avenue. One is on the west, one is on the east. We're going to encourage our customers to come in on the east entrance and circle around past the loading docks to the north and then back down south into the kiosk area, pick up their groceries and then head out hopefully to the west on University Avenue. One of the things that we can do to control traffic flow and the amount of trips that are coming in through this space, because typically our peak times are between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. Our app has the ability to, I call it meter, the number of orders that we get in a certain time period. So you have the ability to schedule your pickup in 15-minute increments, and we can control how many orders can be picked up in those 15-minute increments. So if we're seeing too many people log jam the space or causing traffic problems, we can scale back the number of orders that we're accepting. to adjust that problem. Hopefully we don't see that problem. Hopefully things go smoothly, but we do have that ability to make those adjustments. Architecturally, the building is similar in material and style as the main store. It has heating and air conditioning, lighting, and it's pretty bare bones inside. Other than that, it's concrete floor. It kind of looks like a warehouse inside. It's kept comfortable for our employees, but it's nothing fancy. Another thing that we're planning on doing out of this kiosk, in the event that COVID boosters are required, we have the ability for our pharmacy team to roll out essentially a portable vaccination setup. So they'd bring out basically a tool cabinet with all their supplies, another rolling desk with the computer, and then another rolling cabinet to bring their supplies out to customers. And we'd open up the first lane closest to the kiosk for drive-through vaccinations. So that's our solution to efficiently providing boosters if it comes down to that. I'll quit there, and if you have any questions or things that I didn't fill in, please ask.
It
Thanks for the
appears to
update,
me
John.
that planning and zoning did a real thorough job of processing things from the materials that I read. And I'm kind of excited to get it started.
Great.
Thanks, John. I appreciate the overview, and that's helpful. A couple of things I wanted to ask you answered in your comments, so I appreciate that. I know right now that mostly manages your truck traffic and your extra vehicles and those sorts of things. Fascinating how you're kind of anticipating the truck, how you're going to continue to manage that in that space. I think this is good. Could you tell me where the next closest Aisles Online is in the metro to this, or what's the distance to the next one?
Sure. We're planning on building these at almost all of our metro locations. So the one that's open and operating right now that you can go see live in action is at Urbandale, and that's at the Douglas and 86th location. And then we have two under construction in West Des Moines, one on South 51st and Fuller, and the other is at the Jordan Creek and University location. And our location in Altoona is also under construction. So there's several examples you can see.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking here. I know that in the past, when Come and Go was remodeled, the city had them put brick around their lighting, kind of around their canopy. I don't see that here. And this would not be really a question to ask Hy-Vee, but more a question to ask planning and zoning. Was that talked about in any way, shape, or form? Because I see nothing brick here at all to kind of keep with what we have going on.
I don't recall that we discussed that at planning and zoning. We kind of left the exterior alone. If it is a requirement to put brick around I'm assuming you're talking about the canopy columns. There's one column. There's only one column, but we do have the ability to clad that in brick if it's required. There is brick on the building as well.
Would that be the brown stuff that I'm seeing on the 3D views?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up sorry, my computer is slow.
You're fine. I don't really know how to tell you what page I'm looking at other than it's A6.0.
Yeah, I've got my monitor up behind me here. Yeah, it's page 23 is what you're looking at. So the maroon colors, those are brick.
Okay.
The darker beige and the lighter beige, those are what's called stonewood panels. It's a newer architectural product. It's kind of like tile. It has a ceramic feel to it. It's really tough. It's essentially a plastic product, but it doesn't really feel like a plastic product, and it's really durable. We've been using it on our new stores. Grimes store will have a lot of it on it. We're having good luck with it. And then the dark gray that you see on the canopy, that's it's an anodized aluminum panel.
Okay. Dalton or anybody on the Planning and Zoning Commission, are you able to talk about the brick at all? Was that discussed? Do we know kind of what the background to having brick around, come and go, that type of thing? Was this brought up?
It wasn't brought up at that planning and zoning meeting. I think it was Betty brought that up about the come and go property. It's probably been 6 months ago now. And I may be mistaken here, but I do not believe that that's a requirement of our zoning code. And so we can't just require things that aren't in the code. So if that's something that we want to start requiring on the university quarter going forward, we can make an amendment to the zoning code. Dennis, I think you looked into the brick wrapping for the come and go property. Do you have any other input on that?
No, I think we pulled the information out of the file for that one, and that's kind of a closed case. But in this case, Matt is on the line. The Zoning and Planning Commission can actually require additional treatments to building facades if they so choose. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the council could add that this evening with a majority vote.
If the council wants to take action, they certainly can. Normally, that would be something they might want to, if they're concerned about the recommendations of P&Z, to make a suggestion and kick it back to P&Z. But ultimately, you, the council, are the final authority.
I guess I don't want to be the holdup for this, but I would like to maintain consistency through things. So that's my only thing. And it didn't seem like this was a big deal to Hy-Vee. But again, I just want to maintain consistency throughout what we want our buildings, our businesses to kind of look like.
I think it's a good point, Susan.
Mr. Mayor, if I might.
Go ahead.
Dalton does bring up a good point, though, because I'd say if you make the decision this evening to make that a condition of approval, then the next site plan in the corridor that comes forward would be, I think, subject to that requirement. Otherwise, you're treating applicants differently. And so the best approach to this would be to codify that in our zoning code.
That's correct.
Are we talking about the light poles, or are we talking about the columns? Like the base of the light poles?
Well, so there's two different, Betty was talking about the light poles. What we received information on from Dennis actually talked about the canopy, because I believe, and I'm not 100% on the amount of money, but I believe the city council agreed to $20,000 to give to Come and Go to make all 4 or 6 or whatever columns have the brick around it. But that's kind of what I'm asking about with the canopy. The one, I guess there's only going to be one leg that actually shows. So it's probably not going to be as big of a deal if there were 6 legs, but that's kind of what my question and what Betty's question was, and kind of leading to where I'm asking my questions.
Okay, do you want to push it back to P&Z, or do you want to make that a requirement when we get to item B, which is consideration of the site plan?
No, there's a canopy on the east side too, isn't there? Hello?
Canopy on the east side of this
Hy-Vee.
particular facility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's over there? Canopy's not bricked, I don't believe, on the east side.
I think those are, they're pretty substantial brick columns. They hold up a
Okay.
large roof structure.
Okay.
If it would help you out, we have no objection to accepting a condition to put brick on that column. That's not a difficult issue for us to change on these projects. Some cities require it, others don't. We think it looks good either way.
Well, if it's not an issue, it sounds like maybe we should do it, but we should also look at the zoning code for the future to make it standard as well.
Yeah, we don't want to hold up Hy-Vee on this business, so, yeah, John said they're willing to do it, which is, if the council can agree to have them do it, just go with it.
Okay, let me throw something out here, folks. We're in the public hearing. Shall we go ahead and close that and then open up item B, which is consideration of the site plan, and then make our recommendations from there? I think that would probably be the best bet. Matt, chime in here if I'm wrong.
No, Mayor, if you guys have had your discussion about what you want to do, that would be the next step.
Move to
I move
close
to
public
close.
hearing.
Second,
Second,
Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
yes.
Mike LaFredo, Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item then will be consideration of the site plan for Hy-Vee Isles Online. Motion to accept.
Well,
Okay.
I think we make a motion to approve it with the condition of adding the brick column.
Thank you. Second.
I will second.
Any further discussion?
If I might, Mr. Mayor, can you maybe, there should probably be some kind of a review on the brick column just for consistency. So request, where'd John go? Oh, there you are, John. John, if you could just submit an architectural drawing showing what you guys are proposing.
Sure, that should not be an issue.
Okay, thanks, Dalton.
Thank you, John, for stepping up and being so nice about this. I really didn't want to hold up Hy-Vee Isles, and so I appreciate your willingness to work with us.
Any further discussion on that? With the changes, roll call.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Reese, we lost you.
Well, she's
Yes, yes, I'm sorry, I said yes.
Okay, sorry, we didn't catch that. Okay, next item is a public hearing on ordinance 2105, amending the code of ordinances for the city of Windsor Heights relating to animal control and protection. Those are pertaining to the animal impound fees. Motion to open the public hearing.
So moved,
Second,
Second.
Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
yes.
Mike LaFredo,
yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Do we have any public input, Travis?
I've not gotten any emails on this one.
Okay. Anyone in the audience want to address this? Hearing none, motion to close.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo, Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item is consideration of the first reading of ordinance 2105. Motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item is public forum, time set aside for comments from the public on items that are not on the agenda. We will not take any action. Please state your name, address for the record, and no more than 5 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. It's Edie with the Windsor Heights Chamber of Commerce. Just reminding everybody of our breakfast this Thursday at 8 a.m. at Hy-Vee. We'll be meeting at a long table in the Market Grill area. Just for a light breakfast, try their new breakfast menu and some conversation. Always remember to bring a few business cards to pass around the table. And then, of course, we're looking forward to Chamber Night in the Heights, as well as our golf outing, both taking place the first week in August on Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday will be National Night Out. It will also be Chamber Night in the Heights, and of course the Night in the Heights that was scheduled. So a lot going on that first Tuesday in August. We also will be presenting the Citizen of the Year Award and Business of the Year Award at that event. And then Thursday will be our annual golf outing with Des Moines West Side taking place at 11 a.m. with a shotgun. Thank you.
Thanks, Edie. Any other comments? Lauren, you got your hand up.
I do. Thanks so much. Lauren Campbell, 1004 63rd Street. I just want to take a moment and express my gratitude for all the help for the 4th of July. Huge thank yous to Chief McCluskey and all of public safety for the work to keep the parade route safe. Even we had an alternate route this year, and it kind of was an all hands event, I think. Thank you to Dalton and Public Works for delivering, setting up, and taking down the barricades. He was able to get some employees that volunteered to work on the holiday, which really helped make things flow well. And thank you to the council for your participation and support of the parade, and the Special Events Committee for their support as well. And also thank you to the Windsor Heights Foundation for the amazing festivities down at Colby Park, and to Chief McCluskey for ensuring that we had an amazing fireworks show. So thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Anyone else? You see anything up there, Travis? Okay. Next item is the consent agenda. Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item is new business, consideration of sewer line cost reimbursement request. Mark Conley, 6530 Del Metro. Motion to consider.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Dalton, you want to run with this one?
Mark's on the call here, so I'm going to defer to you, Mark.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. And thanks for having me at your council meeting. Mark Conley here, 6530 Del Metro in Windsor Heights. I'm a 20-year resident, and like many folks in Windsor Heights, over the course of the years, I have had to have my sewer replaced this spring due to the Orangeburg material that was originally installed in the sewer line. So work began on that in June. I had a couple of estimates, and I went with Des Moines Excavating and Beeline Plumbing, and they began work in mid-June and tore out the existing Orangeburg and put in new PVC pipe. As they got to the street, they found that the slope of my line was lower than that of the city line. And so Dalton came out and took a look and said that, you know, there was really no good way to have those two lines meet effectively, or that he could approve. And so that would require the contractors to dig another trench through my yard in hopes that by putting the line, an alternative line through my yard that they could meet the slope. So I'm on a part of Windsor, I'm a part of Del Metro that is kind of on the incline. And so that required, an additional 2 or 3 days of work. And of course, the tear up of my yard and an additional $7,050 for that additional, or that second line. Things worked out, so they were able to effectively connect the two. So I'm bringing this to your attention in part because I think that this is maybe an issue that is not only going to be unique to me or has been unique to me. And so I just want you to be aware of that. And then also to see, because, I'm fully prepared to pay for the original line, but the second line, I was not, I just wasn't intending to pay for that. And now I am. And so just wanted to get some consideration in terms of, because I don't know where the city line is. I know there's been some back and forth about, well, maybe the contractors should have done a bit more due diligence, but as Dalton expressed to me twice while the contractors were on the job, he said, he wouldn't really trust it, this job with anybody else than the contractors that I chose. That, in a city full of plumbing contractors, that there's just this crew, through Des Moines Excavating that really could do the job. So anyway, I wanted to bring it to the council's attention and see if they would give some consideration in terms of paying for part of that 7,000 or all of it. Any questions?
Mark, was there a permit required?
So a permit was required, and Des Moines Excavation took care of all the permits, as I understand it.
Okay, so that was done through the city, wasn't it, Dalton? Dalton?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. I mean, I'm looking at the homeowner. If I were the homeowner, I don't know anything about sewer lines and the angle it should be at, any of that. I would think that the permit would say it's okay to do, and the contractor is responsible for doing it at the right angle. So I guess I'm a little confused about that. Doesn't make real good sense to me why the gentleman, Mark Conley, would have to do it again and pay for it twice, because apparently the figuring out what needed to be done ahead of time and granting the permit wasn't done very well. It's my opinion.
Well, and I think it's a situation where, they don't know what they're going to get into till they dig it up, right? And lay the line. So I had a camera go through the sewer line, to do a diagnostic to tell me that the Orangeburg had been broken down and needed replacing.
That's true everywhere, just about.
Yeah, right. So, but I don't think there's really any way to ascertain where if the connection is, if the slope's at the correct angle until they're in there looking at it. So, I mean, given, that they had the advanced technologies to look at the situation, I think they did all they could given the technologies that they have. So to me, that's a concern for future residents in Windsor Heights, perhaps having the same problem. And again, having to have a second line dug.
Couldn't they, Mark, I'm not asking you, I'm asking Dalton. Couldn't that have been scoped some way to know the angle and what comes out of the city line and what's expected of the homeowner's line? Dalton?
Yeah, so we do know the location of the service tap on the main there.
Yeah,
And just to make sure we're on the same page here, he didn't have to install two lines. The old line at 6530 was laid flat, and even with a slight degree of backflow towards the house, which is out of compliance with the standard. Standard slope is minimum 2%. And so if we had allowed that pipe to go in where it was, Mr. Conley or the future homeowners would have had issues with it. And so the solution was to take the pipe further down into Del Metro, about 20, 25 feet maybe, to catch some more slope from the sewer main out in the street. Another reason that this was non-compliant is because when the sewer service comes into the sewer main, you don't want it to be tapped below 3 o'clock on the main. So that means you don't want it tapped below horizontal. And the reason for that being is that you want the solids to drop into, it's kind of graphic. You want your sewage to drop into the main and to not sit into the flow line to prevent the pipe from degrading. And so the service connection at 6530 was made on the very bottom of the pipe. It was basically made at the flow line. So there were two items where this was out of compliance in a big way. So the reason that the plumber that Mr. Conley hired, Des Moines Excavating, they've done a few other kind of odd jobs that we've inspected here in the city, and they do a good job. And I told Mr. Conley that, if what you're concerned with is poor workmanship, I mean, I can just tell you that they have done city jobs in the past, or they have done jobs in Windsor Heights in the past, and they completed them to standard. So the plumber called me up and asked me to come out because he got about halfway out to the street and saw that there was no fall in the sewer service. And so he didn't know how to proceed. So I got out there and I asked, it was clearly flat. And so I asked him what he thought the solution was. And he said that there were two options. One of them was to go west over to 66th Street, because Mr. Conley lives on a corner lot, or to take it further down Del Metro. And I told him that I didn't really care which way he went, but the way that it was currently configured wasn't going to fly. So he didn't have to take out any sewer that he had just installed.
Dalton, couldn't that have been determined before you did the first construction?
No, so they did televise his line, but it was the line had failed and it was full of solids, rags, and water. And so they couldn't see anything.
Well,
it's hard to tell the slope of a pipe just by televising it as well.
Well, it sounds like it was trial and error.
What's that?
Which is probably not a good approach.
Sorry, Mike, what'd you say?
It's kind of a trial and error, dig the trench and then it doesn't fit in that trench to connect. But they didn't know it ahead of time.
Right.
It seems like if you located the city connection, and then you would know what the slope needs to be from the house to the city connection, you could provide for that slope. So, 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock, I mean, my watch says 20 till 7. So I understand what you're saying with the clock thing, but I think that's beyond most homeowners. And so I would be confused on it, and other council members, maybe they wouldn't be, but I would be confused. And so I think there needs to be some accommodation to this. I don't know
Sure,
why.
and that's, so when we did this, or when Mr. Conley did this project, I went out and talked to him a few times, and he asked me on site if the city would offset some of the additional costs. And all I told him was that I don't have the authority, and Dennis doesn't have the authority to just issue that reimbursement or offset, because it's codified what the homeowner is responsible for. And so if that's something that the city council wanted to do, that'd be something that you guys have to take up. But Dennis and I just can't.
Well, Dalton, where does the contractor's responsibility come in?
I would say that's probably between the property owner and the contractor, since they don't hold a contract with the city. I mean, they hold a permit. So as long as the work is completed to code, That's about all we can do for the permit.
So it's according to code.
Yes, yep.
Okay, well, I think, in my opinion, and I understand what you're saying, makes sense. However, I just think there's got to be a better way so that so how many trenches are you going to dig if the other one didn't do it? You're going to dig a third trench? You know,
Right.
so, I mean, I'm being a little bit silly on this, but at the same time, I think there should be some reimbursement some way.
So the contractor did measure the slope of the pipe out in the street and use some geometry to figure out how much fall they needed to get from the house to the main, and then kind of triangulated it. I was out there with him when he did it. Figured he needed about 25 feet to do it. And so that's how far he went, 25 feet to be safe.
So, you know, what I would.
So it wasn't, I mean, it's not like he just cut into the street the second time, crossing his fingers and saying a prayer.
I would, you know, and again, you're the expert on this stuff, but there's some liability on the part of the contractor and not knowing what he was doing and continue with the trench that wasn't going to allow the pipe to fit same level. So, and I don't know.
Matt, is there any role for the city in discussions between the contractor and the homeowner in that regard?
No, as long as the permit was done properly, that's the end of the city's involvement.
Well, I for one would not like to be the homeowner like that, and I would be a lot more upset than Mr. Conley is with it, because I don't see that he's at fault on this thing. Do you see that he's at fault in this, Dalton, for not doing something?
I don't know if I would say he's at fault, but by our code, he is responsible for the cost of the repair. It would be similar to doing a kitchen project and cutting open the drywall and finding out you got old wiring throughout your old house. And to pass an inspection, you'd have to update your wiring. It's incredibly unfortunate. I empathize, but
okay, let me
it's not really your fault the old wiring's there.
I don't mean to delay this, but just to follow through a little bit on this. So the homeowner would be responsible for the contractor and the city not putting it in correctly. That's what I'm hearing. And I guess I don't understand that. So, and maybe it's not important that I do, but I think for the future and for this case, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Any other discussion from the rest of the council?
Dalton, oh, Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Susan. Just a question for legal. This is, and I sympathize with what has happened here because, you know, obviously, Mr. Conley, you have a beautiful yard in addition to your $7,000 out of pocket. My question is for legal. How do we, I mean, it's codified that, you know, it has to be at the owner's expense. We can just consider and agree that we just ignore city code. Is that what we're doing?
Not that you can just ignore code, but that you as the council have the authority for whatever factors you determine that this situation, there are factors that the majority of you decide you want to, you know, pay for that additional amount, split some amount with him, or decide you just want to let the code stand as is. So, you know, as always, you guys are the final determinant of how the city ordinances and the city procedures are handled. It would, if you did grant this one, you know, this would stand as precedent in the future, but you do have the authority if you wanted to do so. And I would agree with Dalton that neither he nor Dennis have that authority, but you as the full council do.
Well, I mean, unless we consider modifying the code, Matt.
Well, yes, obviously, if you change the code, you can follow what the new code is.
I think if you set a precedent.
Mike Jones's point, the issue is with the existing code, would you have the authority to determine this request? And that's the question I was answering.
Okay, understand.
Is there any past precedent? Has this been brought up before? And if so, where has this been brought up? Is it the same situation? Was there money paid out to these people? I definitely sympathize with you, Mr. Conley. I know that we met and we talked and we had a very nice conversation. And, you know, looking through our codes, I just don't want to open up Pandora's box and have, you know, a whole bunch of people that this happens to. I guess I'm going to go back to Dalton on this. Is there a reason that we were at 3 o'clock, he was at 4 o'clock, or however it worked, and it actually maintained since what, 67? Isn't that when the house was built or something? How does that work?
Yeah, sorry, the house was built in 52, so.
Yeah, add a few more years to that. So it was operational since 1952, and now I understand that Orangeburg creates havoc. We had to go through and have Orangeburg with our sewers. So I definitely understand the headache. I definitely understand the price and how much it is just to go into the road twice. I only got hit for one, so definitely can feel your pain on that, Mr. Conley.
Right.
But again, just kind of wanting to know if there is past precedent. And then also, why would it be all of a sudden after 50 some-ish years that now this isn't working any longer?
So to answer your first question, there is precedent. The city changed the code back in May of 2019 to specifically clarify that the homeowner is responsible for the connection to the main or the connection device, whether that's a saddle tap or a Y or a T or whatever it is. And we didn't get real specific with what that connection device was for fear of missing one or leaving off a new technology that hadn't been invented yet. And so the connection device was updated in 2019 because the city, the way that the code used to read, it was pretty vague. Actually, it wasn't all that vague, but it could be interpreted that the city would pay for the replacement of the Y or the T. And so a few years ago, we updated the code to clarify that the homeowner is responsible for the connection to the main. We have never cost shared or reimbursed or offset anything in relation to the slope of the pipe though. So that would be a first.
Okay.
And I
don't mean to be stubborn about this, but I don't disagree with the code, but it seems like it was installed incorrectly. And so that's my only point, that there's got to be some liability somewhere. And maybe it's with the contractor. I don't know, but that's how I see it.
Mayor? Mr. Mayor, could staff finish their comments, please?
Yep.
And then Susan, to your second question about why that hadn't failed yet, you'd be amazed how long a sewer can kind of function, especially if it's Orangeburg and there's failures in the bottom of the pipe. It's not holding any liquids at all. And so, it's kind of the liquids seep out of the pipe into the surrounding soil. And so all you're left with is just solids. And those solids, like toilet paper, is designed to break down in a sewer system. And so those do break down as well. So for example, on, I think it was on Forest Court, Urbandale was out cleaning and they sent me some pictures of the stuff they pulled out, and it just blow your mind. I mean, there was a butter knife, a full plunger. Like, how does that even happen? So it's a pretty resilient system. And then at the same time, I'll say it's a somewhat fragile system. So a root can catch a rag, which catches another rag, which creates a huge issue. So we've seen here in Windsor Heights, I've seen sewer services function well past their expected life, and 60 years for an Orangeburg service is well past expected. That answer your question?
Do we know of any other cases where there had to be 2 trenches dug because they made a mistake?
I don't know where there's been 2 trenches dug, but as Mark alluded to, Des Moines Excavating was on a sewer service replacement up on 63rd Street, where they abandoned an old septic tank and then drilled in a private service through 2 rear yards, purchased a private easement, and tapped it into another sewer main to the tune of like $30,000, and the city didn't contribute at all.
Did they have to dig 2 trenches?
No.
Okay, that's kind of. Okay, I'm done.
And Dalton, my last question, thank you for answering my first 2 questions, by the way. You did answer them efficiently. The next thing is, let me see, I didn't write this one down. Are there any programs available? I know that some of them are income-based, but do we have any programs that might help Mr. Conley that aren't really income-based? Because the income really isn't, when you're getting hit with $15,000 worth of sewers, sometimes your checking account or savings account can't take that big hit. So are there other kind of programs, grants, anything like that aren't income driven?
The only program that I'm aware of, and the last time that I checked, this still held true, was the Neighborhood Finance Corp Save Our Sewers program, which the city of Windsor Heights participates in, but it is income based. They offer low interest rates for stuff like HVAC system, roofs, sewer services.
Thank you.
Mark, that might be something you want to look into. I don't know where your income is, but it might be enough to at least take a look at the website or inquire from the city.
I can certainly look at it. Thank you.
You have looked at it?
No, I said I certainly can look at it.
Okay.
And final question for me, Mr. Conley. I guess I don't want to, you don't have to answer this question because it's a private conversation, I guess. But I mean, have you spoken to the contractor about what, potential liability they have as far as, charging you $7,000 for a job that you hired them to do? And it sounds like they didn't do it right and then had to do it again and then made you pay for it.
Yeah, I have not. I wanted to talk to the council first, but again, to my earlier point, I'm like, if this is the best crew in town to do this work, then we're in some trouble for other residents.
Well, Mark, I'd say probably the best.
One at a time. Mike, are you done?
Yes, I'm done. Thank you.
Mark, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, if this is the A team to do the work, as Dalton indicated, that has some serious ramifications for future residents to encounter, or for additional other residents who encounter a similar situation down the road.
Understand. Mike?
Well, yeah, I'm still a little bit confused in that it seems to me the contractor was liable, actually. It may be the best contractor that Dalton knows about, but the best contractor makes errors sometimes. And so, but they compensate for those errors. So that's my feeling. I'm not really arguing, and I said this in my sent email to Dennis, I'm not arguing with the code. I'm arguing, I guess, that we're leaving somebody hanging.
So just to clarify, I can't provide an endorsement or a recommendation for any contractor in town. So I was comfortable with Des Moines Excavating being on that job because I've seen them do projects of similar difficulty for other residents in Windsor Heights that I've personally inspected. Now there are dozens of other contractors here in town that could do work similar to that, but
Dalton, I respect your opinion on that. I'm trying
Yeah.
to very best
Yeah.
could make it.
And then also to clarify, Des Moines Excavating never did anything wrong on this. In fact, they preempted what would have been an even larger issue by calling before they had made the connection to the the sanitary sewer main and requested an inspection because they knew that they were going to be out of compliance. So they didn't put two services in. They removed the old service, started running the new service from the house out to the street. They got about halfway there, checked their elevation shots, and saw that they weren't going to be able to hit it. And that's when they called me. So there wasn't any, as far as the city observed, or as far as I observed, there was no negligence on the contractor or error. Frustration, sure, but no documented error.
There's an error somewhere in this space.
And so the error would have been when the sewer service was installed back in 1952. The city would not have installed that. So the city would have installed the main and possibly provided a stub off of that main.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I think Charles Colby's long gone, so I don't think I can probably go to him.
Anyway, okay, I'm through.
Okay, folks, I think we've considered this. I don't think we need to go any further. You want to reword your motion that we have considered it and leave it subject to code?
Who made the motion?
I have a motion by Mr. LaFredo and a second by Ms. Harms
Okay. What was the motion? What did the motion say?
to consider the reimbursement request. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but they can just deny the request too.
Correct.
I think then
Or-
probably motion
Just-
to pull
I'll
back.
withdraw.
and do that.
I'll just withdraw my second.
Mike, you want to make it again to deny it and we'll go forward from that?
I don't think we have to take any action.
Pardon?
I don't think we have to take a formal action, do we, Matt?
No, Councilmember Harms is correct. If there's no second and it dies, and then there's no other motion, the matter simply is done and we move on.
Thank you. Thank you, Therese, for that. Sorry, Mark, we'll touch base probably a little bit further on maybe the SOS plan.
Thank you.
Next item is consideration of approval of $12,843 Keltec bid public safety vehicle modems to facilitate the Westcom connectivity. Quite a write-up on the in the packet. Chad, would you like to make any comments?
Just
Well, I'll
real
move to-
quick. Sorry, Therese.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to move to approve first so we can start discussion.
Okay,
Second.
discussion.
Like you said, it was the information's in the packet, but several of our mobile modems are older and do not support the technology that we need to connect to the Westcom platform. This is not unexpected. We knew this was coming, along with the licensing aspect of it that's outlined there. And I'm confident that we can get both the modems and the licensing done under the current budget without an amendment.
Hey, thanks for all your work on this, Chad. I know this has been part of the process and what we needed to do and the big plan of transitioning to Westcom. So thanks for moving this forward and for the great work at keeping our additional expenses to a minimum. So.
I feel sorry for Captain Meyer. I've had him buried in all things Westcom for the last 2 months, and I think he's starting to hate me, but we're getting there.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Derek.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item is consideration of local emergency action plan.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I guess this is mine too, isn't it? So this is a work in process over the past year or so that developed out of the Public Safety Committee and some discussion between Teresa and I on things that we needed to tackle. And I believe it's been through Public Safety Committee, Communications Committee, and the Public Works Committee. So it should not be new to anybody. And this is just the final proof of that. So for our next disaster, we have a kind of a checklist and a plan to work through.
Yeah, I'm glad we have a plan, Chad.
I would just echo that and say, after we went through the derecho, we learned very quickly that not having identified point of contact and process and all of those sorts of things created a kind of a fruit basket upset for us. And so that's when we started having a conversation about, what we needed to have in place to be able to make sure we knew, what to do when something like this happened. So there wasn't a guessing game about, what our process and protocol would be. So I appreciate all the work that the public safety team did on this, but Chad and the department did specifically to help us, bring a plan forward, and then all the other committees for taking time out of your committee time to look at this and give feedback and make sure it worked for everybody. So great team approach to make sure that we're in a good place moving forward. So thanks for everybody's work on this.
Good job.
Any further
Chad,
comments?
Chad, I have just a few questions or statements, I guess. Great job going through this. I really appreciate the after action review. That has been something that I have pushed for and talked about that we have not had. And that is a big pet peeve of mine that we have not done. So I definitely appreciate that being put in here and you listening to me complain over and over again about it. So thank you. The other thing, this is just kind of something for you. It talks about on page 69, it would be 5 crisis emergency checklist under initial warnings. And then if you go down to additional notifications, and then it talks about social media, code red, rave alerts, and Nixle, have we decided, I know that we were waiting until we got to Westcom, what we were going to push out for our residents as far as what we were going to do. I know that this kind of comes under communication and maybe not here, but maybe at least now we can start asking questions and making a plan as to what we should do to have our residents sign up for things.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm glad you asked because I did need to address that as well. In our move to Westcom, and actually even before that, there was some discussion at the county level about whether or not to continue with Code Red and potential move to what's called Rave Alerts. It's a different platform, but a similar setup. Both of those pull landlines in automatically, but if you have like a cell phone, which as you know, a lot of homes don't have landlines anymore, you have to sign up. We have been told that Rave Alerts is probably what's going to happen, but it's not been through the committee at the emergency management level yet to gain full approval. So that's why I put both of those in there. But as we identify that and get that nailed down, I would guess within the next year, we'll know for sure. And then I'll update the plan to reflect that as well. But currently we're kind of in this weird stage where they're using Code Red, but they're talking about Rave Alerts, and both are in play in Westcom. And so we're kind of in a waiting for the final word to come down and say, yes, we're going this direction, and then migrate that. Nixle is actually a city-based product, but as we've discussed before, the problem with that is you have to have somebody to manage it, of course. And that's why we identified the police department Facebook as that primary emergency tool, is because I've got redundancy built in that. We can post to it immediately, and it's a lot quicker to get to than Nixle is. So that's kind of that primary focus at this point.
Should we be asking our residents, should we be putting out that they could sign up for Code Red as well as Rave at this point in time? Or are we still kind of in that position where right now Code Red is probably what we should have them sign up for. I guess for me, I'm kind of in a position where I don't really know. I mean, we're kind of Polk County, we're kind of Westcom, so it's kind of a little, I'm kind of confused because I see in here it says that Westcom is going to set off our siren, but then I think our sirens went off on accident through Polk County at some point in time this last week. And so I guess maybe it's because we're transitioning and we're making this so that you don't have to go back through and readjust things or bring it back to us. And we're just going to move forward.
So originally my plan was to do a campaign on Code Red. And actually it was back about a year ago when we started this plan. But the problem with that was I started hearing the murmurs of we're switching to Rave. And so what I don't want to do is do a big push to get everybody to sign up to Code Red and then come back around and say, oh, well, now you need to sign up for Rave. And so that's why I've been on hold with that. And I don't want to push out sign up for Rave because A, we're not using it yet, and B, they haven't got the final approval for it yet. So we are kind of in this holding pattern with that. And it's not just Westcom dependent. I think Polk County is looking at switching as well. They just haven't made the decision yet. So our storm siren was set off in error the other night, literally within seconds of me posting the tornado watch, and then we couldn't get all of this to find out what was going on. But we'll reprogram there's a radio that's attached to that siren, and that will be reprogrammed for Westcom to set it off. So it's currently being set off by Polk County, but one of our punch list items is to reprogram that radio so Westcom can activate it. So that's coming as well. But to answer the question about having people sign up, at this point, what I would prefer is just to drive everybody to the police department Facebook for emergencies and leave that until we get it identified, nailed down, and then we'll do a campaign to push it out. One other thing while I'm on this topic that's half related, our non-emergency number will likely change because Polk County actually owns that 286-3632 number. And our original intent was to try to see if we could port it over so we didn't have to change it. And that's part of a bank of numbers for Polk County, so that's probably not going to happen. But I actually ordered postcards. I think I ordered them today, actually. And we'll do a USPS. It's called EDVM, Every Door Direct Mail, where we'll send those out that have the updated phone number on them as we get closer to the transition. So that's coming as well. But it's all just, the little steps to get to the final product. But there will definitely be a revision at very least of Code Red versus Rave or whatever product they go with coming to this plan in the coming months.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Comments? Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item is consideration of change order 9A, University Avenue Improvement Project. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
So just out of curiosity, and I know the ICN, I mean, I know what the ICN does and is and all those sorts of things, but kind of I'm not familiar with, or at least I shouldn't say I'm not familiar. I don't remember the agreement. It said City Council approved in April of 2020. And then kind of what access are we providing for the ICN? Why is it important to be part of our infrastructure here in the city? So if I could just kind of get a better understanding of that would be helpful.
Dalton?
Yep, give me just once I'm getting the agreement pulled right up here. So as you said, we entered into an agreement with the ICN last year after working with them for about 2 years to identify what infrastructure they had and we had and where. So back in the mid to late 90s, the city installed a bunch of conduit along the University Avenue corridor and at some locations on 73rd Street. and the ICN just went through and pulled conduit through, or pulled fiber through the conduit that we had installed with no kind of agreement in place. So it was ripe for issues for maintenance, locates, emergency response. So that's why we entered into that agreement. In return for entering into the agreement, or I guess the terms of that agreement were, we grant the ICN access to our conduit and to our handholds, and they give us 12 out of their 72 fibers that are in the line running through Windsor Heights. And so by entering into that agreement, we didn't have to install any fiber optic cable on our own, which is great because as a small department, we just don't have the capability to operate and maintain that the way it ought to be. So they have to be located. Every time somebody calls in a locate ticket, it has to be located because because the ICN is located in our conduit, they locate the conduit for us when they locate their fiber. And then the benefit for ICN to be in this agreement is that they didn't have to install their own conduit. And so it was a mutually beneficial arrangement. What was your next question, Teresa?
Right. So my question is what is that conduit doing for us in the city? Like, what is it providing? What's the value? That's what I'm trying to put that together in my, like, what am I missing?
Sure. The conduit connects all of our traffic signals together, and it even did back then. And so even back in the 90s, the signals kind of talk to each other on what's called a twisted pair. So it was copper wires. It would be like comparing a dial-up internet to a 5G cell phone. So they did technically talk to each other to coordinate platooning on the road and improve traffic. And then the other plus is that it gets our fiber optic cable. That's part of their strand. It gets us to all the other jurisdictions in town. So if there's opportunity for us to connect into their systems, the infrastructure is already there.
If I can jump on the back of that just a second. One other thing is that a couple of those fiber pairs are going to provide some redundancy for our Westcom connections as we go forward.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was trying to understand, was just kind of have a better, like, what does it help us do? What's its function? So thank you for reminding me. I just couldn't remember. I couldn't remember that piece. And then, so this budgetary item, is this currently in the budget or just goes into the University Avenue? I know that this is a change order. So I'm sorry, I just had to, like, never mind. I answered my own question. Thank you.
Sure.
Dalton, can I ask, I, like Teresa, did not go back through and look at the city's agreement. So I'm just kind of looking at the split. What is the split between the city and ICN? Is it like 80-20? Is it 60-40? Or what is the split, and how did we determine how much money we were putting in versus how much ICN's putting in?
Well, so the percentages of the split kind of depend on what part of the agreement you're talking about. So like the fiber optic, we have possession or rights to 12 out of the 72 pairs. So when it comes to like fiber repairs, we pay for 1270 seconds. If you give me a second, I'll just pull up the agreement here quick. The ICN handles another, like, it's kind of an intangible, but it's of extreme benefit to us, is the ICN handles emergency after hour hits. So if somebody is drilling in a water main or whatever else they might be putting in, they hit that and they take down our traffic signals. The ICN, their customers are hospitals, clinics, schools, and state agencies. And so they're required to provide a timely response after hours. And so they have it handled. Sorry, this agreement's really long, so.
Any further questions? If not, roll call.
Well, did
I
he
guess
get the
I would
answer?
like to get the answer before I make a decision.
So the conduit is a 50-50 split. The city pays for fiber 12 out of 72 of the total cost. Any request for access to the fiber cable will be at the cost of the requester. Yeah, so it's 50-50 on conduit, which would include like the transport facility handholds, and then 12.70 seconds on the fiber.
So wouldn't this be conduit though? And so then wouldn't that be a 50-50 split? I'm just, the conduit was at proper depths. When Elder Corp and ICN checked it, now it's discovered to be too shallow between pothole and handhole locations. So it's because of the improper installation of the city's old conduit in the 90s. So if it's 50-50, then wouldn't it be, aren't we shelling out a little bit more than 50-50?
And that goes back to the cost of the requester. And I'm just trying to find that line again so I don't misstate it. So I'm having a hard time finding it now for the sake of getting you an answer. Because it was the city's owned conduit, I mean, we owned that, and it was in conflict with the city project. So if it were not for the city, the ICN would not be moving it. That is why the cost is broken out that way.
So even though it's the conduit, we wouldn't do a 50-50 split because we're doing a project. Is that kind of what I'm understanding?
More or less, yeah. So it'd be similar to like the snafu we had with CenturyLink last summer, where we waited and waited and waited. Well, we weren't going to pay for them to move it because it wasn't really wasn't our infrastructure. So kind of a similar situation.
This number is coming from Baker. Is that right, Dalton?
Yes. Yep.
And so in developing it, how did they, I guess, do you know, how did they develop that number?
Actually, so Baker went through and identified what work needed to be done. I guess me, Wyatt, and Baker went through and identified where the conflicts were and what work needed to be done. And then kind of put together a schedule of work necessary. And then they assigned unit pricing to it, which we checked kind of against precedent with other, like the traffic engineer pulled and Ming double checked it versus prices that we got on the university project. And then I had the traffic engineer in West Des Moines take a look at it, as well as the ICN. So the unit pricing and the actual units are pretty well spot on to where they ought to be.
So maybe to piggyback what Mike Jones was asking, who came up with the money, the cost split there? Was that you? Was that Baker? Was that Elder? Was that ICN?
The split of the cost, you said?
Yes.
That was me and the ICN. His name is Tim Flickinger. He's like their network operations administrator. So Tim and I went through our agreement, split all the items out, put them in a table, figured out who's responsible for what. And so that's what you've got. I'm sorry. That one is not, but yeah, I worked with the ICN on it. So like their network administration person, who's the one that helped us put the agreement together. And he's actually been incredibly helpful on this and the the next item on the agenda too, which he very well could just say, not my problem, but he's got the expertise and he's willing to kind of loan it to us.
I guess for me, my concern is just how we came up with these numbers. With 18,000 and 8,000, if we're splitting conduit 50-50, how are we paying more than 50%? That's my concern.
Oh, sure. Give me 1 second here. I'm pulling up a table.
Dalton, while you're looking for that, I think there's a very basic question here. Is the city splitting the cost of the conduit 50-50?
The conduit, no. The conduit is 100% the cost of the city.
And that's because we have to move it because of our project. Otherwise, there would not be any reason to move it. Is that correct?
Correct, yep.
So that's why ICN is not paying for the conduit. ICN is paying $8,000 for what?
So they're contributing for adjusting handholds, 3 different handholds, installing locate tri-view rods, removing and remove existing handhole and replacing it, 66, 73rd. They are paying for a case change to the new case, which is the hot cut there, item 13, I think, on the sheet you're looking at. Yeah, so they paid for the hot cut, which was the after hours. They did it at I think they did it 4 o'clock in the morning. It started at 10 o'clock at night and finished at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, I think that that's a good summary, but it helps to explain why this is not a by the book or by the contract cost split. And answer this, Dalton, because this had to be relocated because of the city's project, ICN could have said you pay for 100% of it, city. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Any further discussion, or does that answer your question, Susan?
I guess it answers my question as much as I think it's going to get answered. So, yes.
Any other comments?
So in looking at number one, conduit work is only $585. Is that right?
Right, yep.
Okay. And I think Dennis sort of answered it the best way I think it can be explained is that normally it would be cost sharing, but because we're doing this, we have to foot the entire bill.
For the $585, yes, because there wasn't a mutual benefit.
Okay. And so the overwhelming majority of the costs are the shared costs?
$8,000 are strictly to the ICN and about $18,000 are straight to the city, but most of them are split, yeah.
Okay. All right. That answers my questions. Thank you.
Anything further? Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Therese Harms.
Yes.
Next item is consideration of change order 9B, University Avenue project, the 73rd Street traffic signal upgrades and fiber interconnects. Motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
My question would be, on the traffic signals, is that Urbandale doing that?
No.
Nope, so this is sorry, I was on mute. This is the interconnect on 73rd Street from University down to the south to get us hopefully connected into the West Des Moines system.
Okay, so,
And regardless of whether or not the city of West Des Moines does take it over, all of our signals will be connected. And if that does stall out, I don't think it will.
who's doing the work, though, is my question.
Who's doing the install?
Yeah,
Baker Electric is.
okay, but who goes through the expense on that? Is it shared?
On 9B, the cost is the city.
Is Windsor Heights?
Yes, yep.
Okay, that's my question.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Teresa Harms,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes,
Susan Skiris.
Yes.
Next item, item F, consideration of city administrator evaluation process. What would you folks like to do? Mike, I think you had some questions on this one.
Yeah, I just thought it would be helpful if we could kind of set a firm timeline as far as how we would like to do this, as well as come up with a process by which we would create, an evaluation instrument. I don't know if everybody had got my email that I sent earlier. That's a question.
Yes, I did.
I did as well.
So I didn't know if the council wanted to sort of take that and modify it, or however we want to do it. But I think,
Mike, you're talking about the instrument itself.
yeah, plus just establishing a good time frame, because we have a council meeting on the 2nd of August. We have a council meeting on the 16th of August, and then in September, the 6th and the 20th. And obviously, I think maybe the middle of September is going to be the 1 year. So,
Mike, I didn't receive an email. Did you send one out?
I sent the council the instrument that you had provided me.
Oh,
Mike, now why are you going with September? I know that's the year, that's a full year for Dennis, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying that we should try to have it done by then, I thought would
Yeah, I
be.
think we should have to have it done by then, but we want to get him on a fiscal year too. I believe, don't we? Just like everybody else.
Well, I think his probably coincides with the contract here.
Well, the
Yeah.
contract is based on fiscal year, I believe.
Oh,
It isn't?
So the language in the contract says that 6 months, and we didn't do that. But the city council will annually review the performance subject to a process, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're coming up on annually. I guess you could read that as just as long as it's some point during the year, but we're coming up on the year and we won't have done it. So
So is this the first administrator that we adjusted the contract dates? The prior ones were during the fiscal year.
what was the prior one? This one was beginning September 8th of
I
2020.
understand that, Dave. I understand that. My point is, it could be prorated, whatever council determines, could be prorated for the time that he's been employed here. And then you could start off clean on the next fiscal year. I don't care. I mean, it doesn't make any difference to me, but that seems reasonable.
Mike, you remember the process that we used before? What changes do you suggest that be made on this one? Because basically we have a form, we have a process that we used. I know there was some heartache on it, but it did work. We just missed out on a couple of council people being available at the time that we went through it. That won't happen.
Are you talking about the previous administrator that we evaluated?
Yeah.
Well, that was, we don't want to talk about that, I don't think.
I think this is the purpose of this conversation, is so we can avoid having to
Yes.
deal with that.
I agree.
So, and I think we used, you know, an instrument that as well. I had asked Dennis, I'm not even sure if you ever found it. You can tell me if you did or you didn't, but I don't think council, it was a different council, but was, you know, pleased with it. So I'm hoping we could, you know, figure out something that is satisfactory to everybody.
Yeah, Mike, I don't.
The evaluation form.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't think it was necessarily the fault of the instrument, although I think there was fault with it. But I think it was because of the process that was used that was faulty. So.
Can I ask how we came up with this? I was not, of course, on council when this went through, so I'm kind of coming in and just looking at it. So just kind of wondering, did we pull it from other cities? Did we pull it from a state evaluation? Did we pull it from a previous city administrator who gave this to us? Or kind of how did we come up with this tool as a performance evaluation form?
We have the previous evaluation form.
Yeah.
So,
That form was in use, fairly common, I believe, in most of the other communities, something very similar.
well,
Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the fair statement. It's one we've used in the city for quite some time. So if you guys want to reevaluate it, that's fine. Otherwise, it covers pretty much everything that's there, I think, and go from there.
I think my personal opinion is, and I've looked at it, I made some suggestions to Mike Jones, that it is cumbersome. And as I recall, the forefront, it was how it was implemented last time. There was no congruence between the instrument and the objectives that were written. And so, and there was no evidence gathered. So it was basically one time, and it was kind of a last minute thing. I think, Mike, do they have a copy of the procedures? Mike Jones?
Yes.
Okay, the ones that I wrote?
Well, no, and to be clear, it sounds like we might be having two different conversations, because there is a form that was
Yeah, I know the form.
specifically used
Yes, I know.
for the administrator,
Right,
the previous one.
correct.
And there is currently now the performance evaluation form, and those are two different things, correct, Dennis or Dave? Okay. And the form that I provided was just the form that had been provided to me. That was what I had provided to council. So everybody is looking at that as that. And I know, Mike, obviously you've sent me some things that you think should be different on it. Everybody else.
Well, you know, the instrument can be what the instrument is, but it's not implemented properly, and there's no set measurable objectives for the person being evaluated to help that person get better or where the council thinks that there's some things that need to be improved. That was never done because the goals that were written the last time we used this didn't even make sense compared to the evaluation. So that's what, I mean, I used to do this for a living, this kind of thing, and I have a little sense of it, but it needs work. It needed work, and I think we're starting to do that. We started late, unfortunately, but there needs to be work done with this thing. Procedurally, it's wrong because you don't do anything with the administrator till the end of the year, and then you do it. And I think there needs to be some formative evaluations or meetings with the administrator ahead of time, like Dennis probably does with his department heads, to kind of assess where they are. And it's not to try to catch somebody doing something poorly. It's trying to readjust and see where they are with regard to the objectives that were set. And so there's an adjustment time to, deal with it as council wants them to. So, yeah, we didn't do any of that. Two people got together, one council and the mayor, and completed the forum last time. And that's what it was. I don't think there was any data gathering. And so, I mean, I got fed up with it, I'll be honest with you, because it just wasn't right. And so I think there's better ways to do it. I know there is, and I'm not too concerned about the instrument. Whatever anybody wants on it, it's fine. But procedurally, I don't think you wait to, in Dennis's case here now, for example, you wait till the June 20th to sit down with you and do this thing. I think there's data collection on the part of Dennis to support the objectives that are written, and the council has to have that same responsibility to collect data to support or to issue improvement plans along the way, rather than wait till the last week or so and try to compile stuff from memory. And so that's what we didn't do last time. There was no plan for that. Well, some of you may have done it. I don't know that. But, because there's no written procedures on how to use it. I'm done.
Mike, thank you for sending this off to us. I did not get to look at it very closely because it was sent today and I didn't really get a chance to look at it. I did print it off and look at it. So this performance evaluation form, just so that I'm clear on this, because I kind of was clear, I thought, but now I'm not really too sure that I'm clear. So this performance evaluation form is what is used for Dennis and also for say the public safety director and the public works director. Is that correct? Or is this only for the administrator, or how does that work?
Form that I sent to council, my understanding is used for staff and department heads. There is no currently really any, I think, standard form for an administrator, unless we choose to adopt that one.
Gotcha. So this was kind of like just kind of a little thing that says, hey, this is what we kind of can do, or, to at least give us something to look at, since we weren't giving anything to look at all.
Yes. And okay. I guess, again, Dennis, this is a question for you, because I don't know whether or not you were ever able to find the old evaluation form for the city administrator, because I do not know that.
Yes, and I thought that I did email that to you, Mike. I'm looking in my mailbox. I may have made an error. My recollection, it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I blacked out, I used one of the forms that was in the file, and I blacked out the ratings that were given for that person.
My next question is for Dennis, is there an evaluation form that has been used for you in the past, or one that you have seen used in other cities for administrators that you think is an amazing evaluation form that we should look at? Because I think right now we kind of have a blank slate other than what Mike Jones sent us for what we can do, what we can develop. And I think right now we have the time to kind of look through this and make an excellent evaluation form and not leave things up to make mistakes or have issues or things backfire on us. And so let's get this right the first time and then kind of go from there.
Well, Susan, I do have one that's a template from the ICMA that they provide for their members, and it's a pretty good one. But a lot of it is based on the philosophy of your evaluators and those being evaluated. I think it's important, and I'm not just speaking because it's me, but if you're looking for a cookie cutter that's going to give you a rating and add up the numbers and then that's it, and you think that's going to benefit your organization, I would disagree with you wholeheartedly. I think that what you would like to do is identify those areas that the administrator is doing well at and confirm that, and then identify those areas that you want to see work or progress focused on that area in a proactive way. Because what we really, the end goal is we all want to be successful. I want the council and the community to flourish, and I want to do the right job. I want to meet the expectations that you have for me. In terms of this being the first year, we don't have objectives or guidance or anything created yet. We just have a list of projects and tasks that we identified that we should try to complete before the end of the year. And I think I updated the council about the 6-month time period and said, here's where we are at on these major projects and these tasks. And this is where I'm going to focus effort until the end of the fiscal year. And I sent that out to the council. That's one resource that we could use to create like a measuring stick. But other than that, I think what we're looking for, at least what I'm looking for at the end of this first year, is to be able to say, Dennis, you're doing well here. We'd like to have you focus more on these items. And here's how the process is going to be for next year. And I think Mike Lafredo has a good point. It should probably marry up with the end of the fiscal year when I do the other staff evaluations so that everybody's getting their performance evaluation done at the same time. And then we start the brand new fiscal year with, guidance on where we're all going. So I can get you a template from the ICMA. I can send that out to everybody. And I can even take a stab at trying to put into words what the process would look like step by step. But Mike Jones did mention right at the beginning what would be a timeline for doing this. And then I can mirror that in what the outline would look like. It sounds to me like everybody wants to get it done as soon as possible.
August 2nd.
Well, I'd
I
like to get it done as soon as possible, but I also would like it to be done correctly and effectively for not only you, but also for the rest of council. So if we can't get it done August 2nd, I'm not like, that is the date that we need to get it done. I want it to be done correctly and make it so that this helps you to become successful and us to be successful, and we all are on the same page. That's kind of where I'm at.
I think Mike kind of targeted mid-September. If we shoot for having this all wrapped up by the second meeting in September and then back out the dates and work up a timeline, I think that's very doable.
This is Teresa, and I would second that. So I think really important is probably getting the right tool and have the right process. So Dennis, I appreciate you taking that on and helping give us some guidance as far as that resource. I know that Mr. Lafredo has had some thoughts and suggestions on other processes and tools in the past, and so I appreciate that. I think that would be a good direction to go at this point in time. So if we could, figure that out, I'm okay with that time frame as far as the end of November, if everybody else is. And I think this is a good starting point to get us where we need to be.
I'll send that information out to the council as soon as I can put it together. And then should we target a work session, maybe the first week of August, try to have another conversation about this?
I think that'd be appropriate.
Okay.
And then as far as forms and instruments and stuff, Dennis, those be shared with the entirety of the council. If you're able to go back and find the old one, that, and then whatever sort of template you have, and then anybody else, I guess, has
I
Mm-hmm.
think
any.
Dave has a copy of the old one. It was completed. So
One
I'm
important.
sure we have,
Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
well, the one that we used on a former city administrator, the last one we did, Dave and Mike did it, completed it. So there's certainly got to be a copy of it around.
There is.
I have it. Yes, I do have it.
Okay. And I think, Mike, that's what you're talking about, aren't you?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Council, my only request, and you can address this with a lack of a second if it's not appropriate, but it's also very helpful if there is one person on the council appointed to be the kind of person that's managing this. And so if there's somebody that would want to jump forward and say, okay, I'm going to be the collector of information, or I'm going to be the sharer of information, I think that'd be appropriate at this point. Or
I think
something to think about and take action on August 2nd when we have a work session.
I'm happy to do it if nobody else wants to facilitate that role.
we're good.
Anything further on that? Therese, you're gonna move forward on that, and August 2nd, we'll go from there with the work session. Other than that, I don't think we need to do anything more on that. We can move to item G. There's no further discussion.
If
Item
not, I'll
G.
move to,
Go ahead.
oh,
You wanna
I'll
make a
move to
motion on it?
approve the college drive improvements.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Hold on. I'm sorry, real quick. So I don't know who has been up there recently, but technically the residence, I believe, is Clive, at the corner of Harbach and College. The grading there is very, very bad. Like his fire hydrant is sticking up out of the ground and it's not level to the curb at all. Is that going to be addressed? And there's definitely some spots further down College where you kind of have the similar problem.
Yeah, the gentleman over there at the corner of Harbach and College, his name is Leonard. I've talked to him a few times. Spoke to him last on Friday morning and all was good. To answer your question, yes, that'll all be addressed. What you see right now is the rough grading before they bring in topsoil compost and get it amended in. Yeah. Grade.
Thank you, Dalton.
Yep.
Dalton, do you have any update? I know that there was a another communication from I'm sorry, the woods right there on the curb. And so just wondering if there's any update on your communication with Larry.
With the woods or the Cravens?
With the woods.
Okay. Yeah, Larry asked for the city to not conduct restoration on his property, to just let it be. Put all of that in writing and said he wants to handle it. So told him if that's what you want to do, that's fine. We're gonna fix his or straighten out his water service stop box, like the blue circular thing sticking up in his yard.
Okay, I should make sure that's gonna get, so just for the rest of the council's knowledge, very disappointed and concerned with the level and how the reseeding and the lawns and all the weeds and all that sort of thing that we've had a lot of complaints about. And so they're going to actually have Outdoor Concepts come in and install sod the beginning of September on their property. They have an immaculate lawn, and that's their choice, of course, but they're just communicating that they're going to do that because they don't want to have to deal with trying to manage the otherwise poor attempt at trying to grow the grass. So just wanted to let everybody know that was happening.
While we're talking about it, Dalton, maybe this is a question for Justin, but at Lewin Lane, the intersection of Lewin Lane and College, if you're on Lewin Lane and you're looking south towards like the stop sign at Harbach, there's that little triangle that you kind of meet where there's maybe a telephone pole or an electric pole or something. There's a big pole there stuck between the sidewalk and the curb. Just kind of questioning if the resident has said anything about that, because as somebody who would have to go through and weed whack that all because a mower could never fit into that, I would not be a happy camper, especially because of kind of how the point goes. It was when you weed eat and there's a point, you're still not going to really make it look like it used to. So just kind of curious as to if that design was made for a certain way. I guess if it was in front of my house, I would not be happy.
And you're talking about the top, like Lewin has two intersections, the one up towards the top of the hill.
Yes.
Okay.
Closest
No,
to Harbach.
Yeah, we haven't heard anything from any of the residents up there beside Larry. And without seeing that, I mean, I know I've seen it, but without seeing it with that in mind, I can't really speak to that with any specificity.
Yeah, it was hard to get a ped ramp in there that meet ADA compliance the way it used to be. So to get that pedestrian ramp ADA compliance, we moved it away.
Was there any other option that could have come up at that point? I mean, it just really doesn't look very good there, to be very honest. I mean, I guess whatever, as long as the resident isn't upset, and I wouldn't be happy.
Susan, we'll follow up this week and have a conversation with the resident, and we'll see if there's something that is different that could be done. And if there's not, then we'll get back to you and close the loop on that and explain what thought process was going through back when the design was done, okay?
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Susan Skerrys,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item is consideration of pay request number 13.
Rachel is on in 5 minutes.
Street Improvements Project, Allison and 69th, in the amount of $182,548. Motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Susan Skerrys,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Item I is consideration of pay request number 11, University Avenue Project, in the amount of $869,209.43. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Susan Skerrys,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo, Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Next item is council reports. Reese?
My report is, MAC committee met last Tuesday. We got an update from the Greater Des Moines Partnership on the DC trip and then the partnership's policy agenda. Not a lot of significant changes from 2020, mostly due to COVID. We will be, I think that we have myself and Susan and Joseph are all going to be attending the DC trip in September. And so we'll be going, but then they're going to have it again next May. So kind of we need to keep that in mind, probably for budgeting purposes more than anything else, to get it back on track for its traditionally goes in May, but due to COVID this year it was September. We also had a brief discussion on housing, and particularly there's kind of a plea to look at cities considering using some of their ARP, their American Rescue Plan dollars, to put into housing improvements, that sort of thing. And so I believe that in our next meeting, there will be discussion on that in more detail. We had discussion on COVID updates, kind of where the cities are and kind of being back in business. So it sounds like we're gonna start maybe transitioning back our next meeting to in person. So looking forward to seeing all your smiling faces, and everybody can see that Susan and I were twins tonight. And then we also talked about American Rescue Plan dollars. The league provided an update on that and where we are in the process. So I believe that the cities have, and through the end of July, to make the request to the governor's office, that's in play. I believe that we have done what we needed to do, and that our money will start coming in. I think the biggest thing that we need to basically acknowledge and recognize is and that, you know, the dollar amount that we have available really until the end of the FY26 year to spend it. By fiscal year 24, we need to have a plan to spend it, and that we will, I believe that Budget and Finance is going to come forward with some recommendations on how we spend. I think it's maybe a little bit more than $700,000 that we'll have available via the American Rescue Plan to figure out how do we allocate and make improvements. So anyways, I think those are probably the biggest items. I did attend Night in the Heights last Tuesday. I think that those events have been, again, very well received. Lots of great, wonderful conversations from our residents about loving having the music. And again, that's primarily a foundation event. And so I just, thanks to the foundation for all their work and making those happen. And I know that there's several, you know, there's another handful more of those, but I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Mike Jones?
Budget Committee, Finance Committee met last week, and Dennis sent out, well, I think Dennis and Rochelle may have sent out a summary of that meeting. If you have any questions about that. If not, it pretty much succinctly summarized what we talked about.
Okay. Mike Lafredo?
No report, Dave.
Okay. Joseph?
Joseph's absent, Dave.
Okay. Susan?
Just wanted to say thank you to all who made the July 3rd parade, music in the park, and the fireworks such a great success. Thank you for all the hard work, and for those that volunteered and worked on a holiday weekend. Thank you very much. Thank you to all who attended the ribbon cutting events last week. We kind of threw 2 in there last week, so appreciate everyone who took the time to attend both of those. Metro Waste has a short meeting this Wednesday, not really much on the agenda. And then I just, going back to one of Dennis's emails that he sent out, There was the review, the ADA review on the sidewalk at 64th and University. And I'm just wondering if that's going to be talked about, if it's going to be kind of on the agenda. I would just like to hear a little bit more about this, since this has been brought up over and over again by Mr. Bredbeck, and he's been told over and over again that there's no issues, everything looks great, everything's great, and now there is an issue. So I'd kind of like to know, what are we going to do? Have we talked to him about maybe adding making him kind of part of the process in making this area better? I know that I do not like that intersection. When I walk, I cross the street, and I do not go to that intersection just because I feel as if I'm in the traffic. So this has been something that has been ongoing since 64th Street has had the sidewalks created. So I just kind of wondered about this a little bit, and then who is paying for the changes to be made to this, as I don't really think it's the city's fault that this is not in ADA compliance. So just kind of wondering if this is coming out of our budget to pay for this, to make it compliant, or where we're going from here. And that's it.
You're mentioning stuff that I'm not aware of.
It was in an email that Dennis sent out on one of his Friday emails, maybe 2 weeks ago, Dennis.
Okay.
I don't think it was last week, so it would have been the week before that.
I've got it.
It was mentioned twice. It was mentioned the first time to let you know that we were working on having a third-party engineering firm review the ADA standards along the 64th Street in front of his house, and also the corner at University. And then also I sent you the final report that the third-party company had completed and sent out to you. And the issue, I think, that they pointed to, the corner there, has always been an issue and has been brought up to other councils.
Yes.
As far as I understand, and the council indicated to him that we were going to be taking care of that corner slope issue with the University project. And so that's what we're following through on. But in terms of the other items that he has mentioned, the driveway slope, the driveway is not subject to ADA standards. And also he wants some handrails installed along 64th Street in that area where it's very steep slope coming down into University Street, which is also not something that the city is required to do by ADA. So I'd be glad to have a conversation with you, Susan, if you want to stop in my office or talk on the phone. Anybody else in the council, if you want some additional background, I'd be glad to provide that for you. If the council as a group would like this to become a discussion topic, I can certainly put that on a work session, upcoming meeting.
Dennis, I know this by the resident came through, I think, before Susan was on the council. And it was worked on before, and if Dalton's still on, I thought then, as I recall, that seemed like everything was ADA compliant. That's what the conclusion of it was. So, and,
yes, the file indicated to us when this was brought up again, that everything was ADA compliant except for the slope at the corner, which was a little bit oversloped, I think. And then I asked Bolton and Mink to provide a review of that, and they did provide that in a letter. And then to go the extra step, we had a third-party engineering firm come in and confirm everything that Bolton and Mink had told us and was in the file. So I think we're pretty solid on what the engineering shows. It's just a matter of what the city, I think, is prepared to do to that section, if there's even anything that can be done. So again, if anybody wants to talk about this one-on-one, please let me know. And if the council wants this to be a discussion topic at a work session, I'd be glad to put that on too and schedule it.
yeah, I personally, I maybe Dave certainly would remember, we kind of gone through this last time, and something's changed. Dave and Mike Jones should remember, and Therese.
Any further comments?
I think, Mike, what is being said is that it's not in compliance though, so it has to be fixed. So they have to try to figure out how to fix it as they're doing University.
Yeah, but he was talking about something else prior to.
No, this was all part of it, and this is just kind of what he's been saying basically the whole time since I can recall.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with university. Maybe that's not right. I don't know that. But I'm just saying the rest of it, as I recall, it was ADA compliant. So I'm not judging it. I'm just saying that's what I recall happening. But with university, that's kind of a current thing. I think.
Yeah, I think we've covered. Anybody else got any more to say? Dennis?
Just one thing I wanted to report to the council that we have a sump pump connected on Allison.
Hooray!
Great.
I look forward to the block party.
A year later.
Thank you, Dennis, and whoever else worked on that issue.
Dalton sweet talked the property owner, and he voluntarily had it all done and completed over the weekend. So we're very happy.
Awesome.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call.
Susan Skiris,
Yes.
Mike LaFredo,
Yes, sir.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
and Teresa Harms.
Thanks.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.